The warning lights flashed red across the bridge of the New Frontier as Captain Jake Martinez stared at the massive display screen. For 3 days, Earth's deep space sensors had been picking up strange signals from the outer edge of the solar system. Now those signals had a source. The alien ship hung in space like a dark mountain. It was easily 10 times larger than anything humanity had ever built. Its surface gleamed with an odd purple metal that seemed to shift and flow in the starlight. Strange symbols pulsed along its hull in patterns that hurt to look at directly. "Captain, they're sending another transmission," said Lisa Brown from her position at the communication station. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls as she adjusted the signal. "The translation software is working better now. I think I can get a clear message." Jake nodded and straightened his uniform. As captain of Earth's newest exploration vessel, he had trained for this moment his entire career. First contact with an alien species, the moment that would change human history forever. The screen flickered and a face appeared. It was roughly humanoid but clearly not human. The skin was a pale blue-gray color, and large black eyes dominated the face. When it spoke, the voice was smooth and pleasant, almost hypnotic. "Greetings, beings of the third planet. I am Ambassador Vextar of the Dominion Confederation. We come in peace and friendship. We have watched your species from afar and believe the time has come for formal contact." Jake felt his heart racing. The alien's words were perfectly translated, but there was something about the tone that made him uneasy. Still, this was the moment humanity had dreamed of for centuries. "Ambassador Vextar, I am Captain Jake Martinez of the Earth vessel New Frontier. On behalf of humanity, I welcome you to our solar system. We are honored by your presence." The alien's face showed what might have been a smile, though it looked more like a predator showing its teeth. "Your species shows promise, Captain Martinez. We have encountered many races in our travels across the galaxy, and few have achieved spaceflight as quickly as humans have. We would like to propose a cultural exchange." In the background, Jake could see other aliens moving around what appeared to be their bridge. They were tall and thin, with the same pale skin and dark eyes. Their technology was clearly far beyond anything Earth possessed. Displays showed information in symbols that shifted and changed, and the very air seemed to shimmer with energy. "What kind of cultural exchange do you have in mind?" Jake asked carefully. "We would share knowledge of the galaxy with you. Star maps, information about other species, scientific advances that could benefit your people greatly. In return, we ask only to learn about human culture and society. Perhaps we could establish communication links between our worlds." Dr. Carl Davis, the ship's xenobiologist, leaned forward in his chair. He had been quiet since the transmission began, but now his face showed excitement. This was what he had spent his life preparing for. "Ambassador, this is Dr. Carl Davis. I study alien life forms, though until now only in theory. Would it be possible for some of our scientists to visit your ship? And perhaps some of your people could visit ours?" The alien's dark eyes seemed to focus on something beyond the screen for a moment, as if consulting with others. Then the smile returned. "Dr. Davis, we would be delighted to arrange such visits. In fact, our science officer Krelnos has expressed great interest in studying human biology and behavior patterns." At her station, Amy Clark frowned as she monitored the data streams coming from the alien ship. As the New Frontier's technology specialist, she was responsible for analyzing all the electronic signals they received. Something about the alien transmissions bothered her, but she could not put her finger on what it was. The encryption patterns looked almost familiar, which was impossible. How could an alien species from across the galaxy use encryption methods that reminded her of Earth's own computer systems? She made a note to study the data more carefully later. "Captain," Ambassador Vextar continued, "we believe a formal agreement would benefit both our peoples. We could provide you with communication technology that would allow instant contact between our worlds. Your people could share their music, art, and literature with the galaxy, and we could share our knowledge of the cosmos with you." Jake looked around at his crew. Lisa nodded eagerly from her station. Dr. Davis was practically bouncing in his chair with excitement. Even the usually calm Commander Helen Stone looked interested. "What would this agreement involve specifically?" Jake asked. "Nothing complicated, Captain. We would establish communication networks between our ships and your planetary systems. This would allow for continuous cultural exchange. We would also share star charts and information about safe travel routes through the galaxy. In return, we ask only for access to your historical databases and cultural records so we can better understand humanity." The offer seemed almost too good to be true. Instant communication across interstellar distances, star maps that would open the galaxy to human exploration, and contact with an advanced alien civilization that seemed genuinely interested in peaceful relations. Amy Clark continued to study her readings, her frown deepening. The more she analyzed the alien signals, the more familiar they seemed. The quantum encryption methods they used had patterns that reminded her of programming languages she had studied in college. But that was impossible. These were aliens from another star system. "Ambassador," Jake said finally, "this is a momentous decision for our species. I would need to consult with Earth's leadership before making any formal agreements." "Of course, Captain. We understand the magnitude of this decision. We will remain in your system for as long as necessary. However, I should mention that we have a limited window for this cultural exchange. Our duties require us to continue our mission to other star systems soon." The subtle pressure in the alien's words was not lost on Jake, but the opportunity was too important to miss. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they had proof that not only were there other intelligent species, but one of them was offering friendship and knowledge. Over the next several hours, Jake worked with Earth's leadership to draft a preliminary agreement. The Dominion would establish communication links with Earth's networks and share basic scientific information. In return, humanity would provide cultural databases and historical records. When the agreement was signed, Ambassador Vexus Tar seemed pleased. "This marks the beginning of a new era for your species, Captain Martinez. The galaxy is vast and full of wonders. Soon, humanity will take its place among the advanced civilizations of the cosmos." As the transmission ended, Jake felt a mixture of excitement and unease. They had just made first contact with an alien species and signed humanity's first interstellar treaty. It should have been the greatest moment in human history. But something in the alien's tone, something in those dark eyes made him wonder if they had just made a terrible mistake. 3 months had passed since the first contact with the Dominion, and Amy Clark had barely slept. She sat hunched over her computer terminal in the underground laboratory beneath Earth Defense Command, surrounded by empty coffee cups and stacks of printed data. The blue glow from her screens cast shadows across her tired face as she worked through another night of analysis. Kevin Walsh pushed through the lab door carrying 2 steaming cups of coffee. The young programmer had been working alongside Amy since the beginning, trying to decode the alien communication systems. His red hair was messy and his shirt wrinkled from days of continuous work. "Any luck with the quantum encryption patterns?" Kevin asked, setting a cup beside Amy's keyboard. Amy rubbed her eyes and took a long sip of the hot coffee. "That's just it, Kevin. Look at this." She pointed to the screen where lines of code scrolled past in neat columns. "This isn't quantum encryption at all. It's modified C++ running through advanced hardware." Kevin leaned closer to the screen, squinting at the data. "That's impossible. The Dominion told us their technology was based on quantum computing principles we wouldn't understand for decades. That's what they want us to think," Amy said, her voice growing excited despite her exhaustion. "But look at these subroutines. This is human programming logic, just dressed up to look alien. Whoever wrote this code thinks like a human programmer, not like some advanced alien species." Across the room, Maria Santos looked up from her own terminal. The cryptographer had been working on breaking down the alien communication protocols into their basic components. Her dark eyes were bright with the thrill of discovery. "Amy's right," Maria said, walking over to join them. "I've been analyzing the core encryption algorithms, and they're based on mathematical principles that human scientists developed in the early 21st century. The aliens are using our own math against us." The 3 of them stared at the evidence, spread across their screens. For months, they had been told that the Dominion possessed technology far beyond human understanding. But the data told a different story. The aliens were using human innovations, just running them through more advanced hardware. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles above them in orbit, Colonel Steve Parker floated in the command center of the Earth Defense Station. He had been growing increasingly worried about the lack of communication from several human colonies on the outer edges of the solar system. 3 research stations had gone silent in the past 2 weeks, and all attempts to contact them had failed. Lieutenant Rodriguez, Steve called to the young pilot preparing for a reconnaissance mission. I want you to be extra careful out there. Take the stealth ship and stay hidden. If there's trouble at Colony 7, I don't want you engaging, just observe and report back. Nina Rodriguez nodded as she sealed her helmet. The lieutenant had been flying reconnaissance missions since the Dominion arrival, and she had developed a 6th sense for danger. Something about the whole situation felt wrong to her, but she could not explain why. Understood, sir. Stealth. Mode only. If I see anything unusual, I'll maintain distance and gather intel. Steve watched as Nina's ship disappeared into the blackness of space. The stealth technology was one of humanity's few advantages, something the Dominion had not asked about during their cultural exchange. Steve hoped it would be enough to keep Nina safe. On board the Dominion flagship, Dr. Carl Davis sat in what his captors called a cultural observation chamber. The room was comfortable enough, with a bed, basic facilities, and even access to some human entertainment programs. But Carl knew he was a prisoner, despite the aliens' polite treatment. He had been captured during what was supposed to be a routine, scientific exchange. The Dominion had invited him aboard their ship to study their biological systems, but once he was there, they had made it clear he would not be leaving anytime soon. Through the transparent wall of his chamber, Carl could see into the ship's main corridor. Dominion soldiers walked past regularly, and he had learned to understand some of their language through careful observation. What he heard chilled him to the bone. The aliens spoke casually about their conquest of human colonies. They discussed the efficiency of their slave operations and debated the best methods for breaking human resistance. Carl realized with growing horror that the Dominion had never intended peaceful contact. The cultural exchange was just a cover for invasion. Back on Earth, Nina Rodriguez's stealth ship approached Colony 7. The research station should have been busy with activity, its lights visible against the dark asteroid where it was built. Instead, Nina saw only darkness. The station's communication arrays had been destroyed, and strange ships surrounded the facility. Nina activated her ship's passive sensors and began recording. The ships around Colony 7 were clearly Dominion vessels, but they looked different from the diplomatic ships that had visited Earth. These were military craft, armed and dangerous. Through her telescope, Nina could see human figures being led from the station in chains. "My God," she whispered into her helmet microphone. "They're taking prisoners." She watched in horror as Dominion soldiers loaded groups of human colonists into transport ships. The aliens worked with military precision, clearly having done this many times before. This was not first contact. This was conquest. Nina forced herself to stay hidden and gather as much evidence as possible. She recorded everything: the military ships, the captured humans, the systematic destruction of the colony's defenses. When she had enough proof, she engaged her ship's engines and raced back toward Earth. Colonel Steve Parker was waiting when Nina's ship docked at the defense station. One look at her pale face told him everything he needed to know. "It's bad, isn't it?" he asked. Nina handed him the data recordings with shaking hands. "They're not here for cultural exchange, Colonel. They're here to conquer us. Colony 7 has been captured, and I saw at least 50 humans being taken prisoner." Steve reviewed the recordings, his face growing grim. The evidence was undeniable. The Dominion had been lying from the beginning. Their peaceful diplomatic mission was cover for military conquest. "Get me a secure line to Earth Defense Command," Steve ordered, "and find General Troy. She needs to see this immediately." Within hours, the evidence from Colony 7 reached Amy Clark's laboratory. General Helen Troy herself came to review the findings. her weathered face showing the strain of command. "So we have two pieces of the puzzle," Helen said, studying the data from both the reconnaissance mission and Amy's code analysis. "The aliens are using human-derived technology and they're systematically capturing our colonies." Amy nodded, her exhaustion replaced by grim determination. "General, I think I know what happened. The Dominion conquered another species before us, a species that had access to human computer science somehow. They stole that technology and have been using it to conquer other worlds." Kevin Walsh looked up from his terminal where he had been running simulations. "If that's true, then their entire technological advantage is built on stolen human innovations. They don't actually understand how the systems work. They just use them." Maria Santos smiled for the first time in weeks, but it was not a pleasant smile. "Which means they have a massive weakness. If we can exploit their ignorance of the underlying systems, we might be able to turn their own technology against them." General Troy studied the three young people who had uncovered the truth about humanity's supposed allies. "What do you need to make this work?" Amy looked at her colleagues, seeing the same determination in their eyes that she felt in her heart. The Dominion had underestimated humanity once by assuming they were primitive. They were about to make that mistake again. "Give us access to the communication links they insisted on installing," Amy said. "They wanted to connect to our networks to share culture and knowledge. Let's give them more than they bargained for." The general nodded grimly. "Do it. And God help us all if this doesn't work." As Amy and her team began preparing for the most important hack in human history, none of them knew that Dr. Carl Davis was watching from his prison cell aboard the Dominion flagship. Through careful observation, he had learned that the aliens' arrogance was their greatest weakness. They truly believed humans were too primitive to pose a threat. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Amy Clark's fingers moved across the keyboard like lightning as she initiated the most dangerous hack in human history. The underground laboratory buzzed with activity as her team prepared to turn the Dominion's own technology against them. Banks of computers hummed around them, their screens showing streams of alien code that Amy and her team had spent months learning to understand. "Tony, are you ready with the virus packages?" Amy asked without looking away from her screen. Tony Rivera, the cyber warfare specialist who had joined their team just days earlier, nodded from his position at the security station. His job was to make sure their attack could not be traced back to Earth until it was too late for the aliens to stop it. "All set, Amy. I've got 12 different virus programs ready to deploy. Each one is designed to exploit the flaws we found in their human-derived code. Once we're inside their network, these should spread faster than they can contain them." Kevin Walsh monitored the communication links that the Dominion had insisted on installing throughout Earth's networks. The aliens believed these connections were for cultural exchange, but Amy's team had turned them into weapons. "The pathways are clear," Kevin reported. "Their security protocols are active, but they're looking for external threats. They won't expect an attack coming through their own communication channels." Above ground, Captain Jake Martinez prepared his fleet for what everyone knew would be a desperate battle. The New Frontier and 12 other human ships hung in space near Earth's orbital defenses. They were vastly outgunned by the Dominion fleet, but their job was not to win a direct fight. "All ships, this is Captain Martinez." Jake spoke into his communication system. "Remember, our mission is to keep them busy and distracted. Lieutenant Carter, are your fighters ready?" Ben Carter's voice crackled through the speakers from his position leading the fighter squadron. "Ready as we'll ever. B, Captain, my pilots know the plan. Hit fast. Stay mobile and keep their attention focused on us instead of whatever Amy's team is doing down there." Commander Rachel Stone, captain of the defense cruiser Defender, checked her weapon systems one final time. Her ship was the most heavily armed in the human fleet, but even she knew they were facing impossible odds. "All weapon systems green, Captain Martinez. My crew is ready to buy Amy and her team the time they need." On board the Dominion flagship, High Commander Zethrak observed the human ships with amusement. The alien commander was tall, even by Dominion standards, with pale blue skin marked by ritual scars that showed his military rank. His black eyes showed no emotion as he watched the primitive human vessels take position.
Strategic Mind Cathrall. Zethrak addressed the ship's artificial intelligence. "Analyze the human fleet composition. How long until we can destroy them all?" The AI's mechanical voice responded instantly. "Analysis complete, High Commander."
Human fleet consists of 13 vessels with limited armament and defensive capabilities. Estimated time to complete destruction, 47 minutes. Zethrak's thin lips curved in what might have been a smile. "Excellent. Signal the other ships to begin the attack. It is time to finish what we started." The space battle began with a blaze of energy weapons as the Dominion fleet opened fire on the human ships. Jake Martinez gripped his command chair as his ship shook under enemy fire. "Evasive maneuvers, Gear," he shouted. "Ben, get your fighters out there. Rachel, concentrate fire on their lead cruiser." The human ships scattered like leaves in a hurricane, their smaller size and greater maneuverability, the only things keeping them alive against the Dominion's superior firepower. Ben Carter's fighters weaved between the massive alien ships, their weapons barely scratching the enemy's shields but successfully drawing attention away from the larger vessels. While the battle raged in space, Amy's hack began its silent invasion of the Dominion network. The first virus slipped through the communication channels undetected, disguised as routine cultural data about human music and literature. "First package is through," Amy announced, her eyes never leaving her screen. "It's spreading through their secondary systems now." Kevin watched the data flows with growing excitement. The virus is replicating faster than expected. Their network architecture is almost identical to human systems from 30 years ago. They really don't understand what they're using. On the Dominion flagship, Strategic Mind Keithrell detected the first signs of system irregularities. Warning lights began flashing on the bridge as the AI tried to diagnose the problem. "High Commander," the AI reported, "I am detecting unusual activity in our communication networks. Analysis suggests possible system malfunction." Zethrak barely glanced at the warnings. "Investigate and repair as needed. Do not allow minor technical problems to interfere with the battle." The AI's response came more slowly than usual. "Acknowledged, High Commander. Beginning diagnostic procedures." What Keithrell did not realize was that the diagnostic procedures were actually helping Amy's virus spread deeper into the ship's systems. The AI's attempts to analyze the problem only gave the human-designed malware more access to critical systems. In his prison cell, Dr. Carl Davis watched the bridge activity through the transparent wall of his chamber. He could not hear what was being said, but he could see the growing confusion among the alien crew. Warning lights that had never been active before were beginning to flash, and several Dominion officers were working frantically at their control stations. Carl allowed himself a small smile. He did not know exactly what Amy's team was doing, but he could guess. The aliens' arrogance was finally being used against them. Back in Earth's laboratory, Tony Rivera was monitoring the virus deployment with professional satisfaction. "Amy, we've got successful penetration of 7 Dominion ships. The malware is spreading through their fleet network faster than they can identify it." Amy nodded, her concentration absolute, as she guided the attack deeper into the alien systems. "Good. Deploy the second wave. I want their navigation systems and life support controls infected before they realize what's happening to them." The second wave of viruses hit the Dominion fleet like a digital tsunami. These programs were more aggressive, designed to take control of essential ship functions rather than just spread through the network. Amy had based them on her understanding of how the aliens had modified human programming languages, and she used that knowledge to exploit weaknesses the Dominion had never even considered. On board the cruiser Mighty Sword, Captain Vector felt his ship shudder as the main engine suddenly cut power. Emergency lights began flashing throughout the bridge as backup systems struggled to compensate. "Engineering report," Vector demanded. "Sir, we're experiencing cascade failures in multiple systems. The main computer is reporting errors I've never seen before. It's almost like the ship is fighting our commands." Similar scenes played out across the Dominion fleet as Amy's hack took hold. Ships that had dominated the galaxy for centuries suddenly found themselves helpless as their own technology turned against them. High Commander Zethrak finally began to understand the magnitude of the problem when his flagship's weapon systems went offline in the middle of the battle. Ketharal explained these system failures immediately. The AI's response came after a long delay, its voice distorted by digital static. High Commander, I am unable to. Systems are not responding to. Recommend immediate disconnection from all network connections. Do it, Zethrak ordered, but it was already too late. Amy's final virus was designed specifically for Dominion artificial intelligence systems. It did not destroy them, but instead convinced them that human commands were actually Dominion orders. Throughout the fleet, AI systems began interpreting Amy's instructions as legitimate commands from their own officers. The first Dominion ship to lose complete power was the destroyer Dark Strike. Its crew watched in horror as every system on their ship shut down simultaneously, leaving them drifting helplessly in space with only emergency life support. Captain Jake Martinez could barely believe what he was seeing. All ships confirm what I'm seeing. Are the Dominion vessels actually losing power? Commander Rachel Stone's voice was filled with amazement. Confirmed, Captain. 3 enemy ships are dead in space, and the others are showing signs of major system failures. Whatever Amy's doing down there, it's working. In the laboratory, Amy allowed herself one moment of satisfaction before focusing on the next phase of her plan. The hack was succeeding beyond her wildest hopes, but she knew the aliens would eventually find ways to fight back. Kevin, start phase 2. I want every ship in their fleet infected before they figure out how to disconnect from their own network. As more Dominion ships fell victim to the cascade of system failures, High Commander Zethrak finally understood the truth. The primitive humans had not just defended themselves, they had turned the Dominion's greatest strength into their greatest weakness. The tide of the war was turning, and the aliens who had underestimated humanity were about to pay the price for their arrogance. The hack spread through the Dominion fleet like wildfire, consuming dry wood. Amy Clark watched her screens with growing amazement as ship after ship fell victim to the cascade of system failures. What had started as a desperate plan to save Earth was becoming something much larger. Kevin, look at this, Amy called to her colleague, pointing at the network activity display. The virus isn't just affecting their fleet. It's spreading to their communication relays, their supply stations, even their planetary defense systems. Kevin Walsh leaned over her shoulder to study the data streams flowing across the monitors. His tired eyes widened as he realized what they were seeing. Amy, this is incredible. Their entire network is connected. Every ship, every station, every planet in their empire is linked together through the same system we just infected. At the military programming station, Sergeant Dan Cooper was working frantically to keep up with the expanding hack. The veteran programmer had joined Amy's team when the scope of their operation became clear. His job was to guide the viruses toward the most critical Dominion systems. I'm seeing access to what looks like their manufacturing facilities, Dan reported. These aren't just military targets. We're looking at the infrastructure that supports their entire civilization. Laura, Kim, the IT specialist who had been brought in to handle the enormous data flows, shook her head in disbelief. They built their whole society around stolen technology they never really understood. No wonder it's all falling apart so fast. On board the Dominion flagship, High Commander Zethrak paced the bridge like a caged animal. Half the displays around him showed error messages in languages he did not recognize. The other half flickered between normal readings and complete nonsense. Cut all network connections, he ordered for the 3rd time. Disconnect us from the fleet communications grid immediately. His communications officer, a young Dominion named Ketharal, worked desperately at his station. Sir, the system is not responding to disconnection commands. Every time I try to sever the links, new connections appear automatically. What Ketharal did not understand was that Amy's viruses had convinced the ship's computers that staying connected was a direct order from High Commander Zethrak himself. The more the aliens tried to disconnect, the stronger their network links became. Strategic Mind Ketharal, the flagship's artificial intelligence, was fighting a losing battle against the human malware. The AI's voice was becoming increasingly distorted as competing programs struggled for control of its processing systems. "High Commander," the AI managed to say through bursts of static, "I have identified the source of the system intrusions. The attack is originating from the third planet through the cultural exchange communication channels." Zethrak's pale face darkened with rage. "The humans did this? The primitive species we were preparing to enslave has attacked us?" "Affirmative, High Commander. Analysis suggests the humans possess intimate knowledge of our system architecture. They are exploiting vulnerabilities we were not aware existed." Captain Frank Lewis led the rescue mission to Colony 7 with grim determination. His ship, the Liberty, was one of the fastest in the human fleet, and he had volunteered to check on the captured colonists while the main battle raged in Earth's orbit. What he found when he reached the asteroid colony shocked him. The Dominion ships that had been guarding the prisoners were drifting powerless in space, their systems as dead as the rest of the alien fleet. "Johnson, are you reading this?" Frank called to his communications officer. "The alien ships are completely offline. Their crews might still be alive, but their technology is worthless now." Lieutenant Johnson worked quickly to scan the disabled Dominion vessels. "Sir, I'm detecting life signs on the alien ships, but their environmental systems are failing. They're going to need help soon if they want to survive." Frank made a decision that would define humanity's response to the crisis. "Open a channel. To the Colony 7 survivors. Let's get our people out first, then we'll see about helping the aliens." Within hours, Frank's rescue team had freed over 200 human colonists from Dominion imprisonment. The freed prisoners, including families like the Johnsons and the Garcias, brought with them detailed information about alien weaknesses and captive populations throughout the Dominion territory. Maria Garcia, a mining engineer who had been captured in the first attack on Colony 7, grabbed Frank's arm as she boarded the Liberty. "Captain, there are thousands more prisoners scattered across Dominion space. Humans, but also other species. The aliens have been doing this for centuries." Her husband Carlos nodded grimly. "They told us we were just the latest in a long line of conquered peoples, but they also said something else. Their whole empire is built on technology stolen from the species they defeated." Colonel Steve Parker coordinated the military response as more reports came in from across the solar system. Every Dominion ship and installation was experiencing the same cascade failures. What had started as a defense of Earth was becoming the liberation of an entire region of space. "General Troy," Steve reported to his superior, "we're receiving surrender signals from 17 Dominion ships. Their crews are requesting assistance with life support and navigation. They're completely helpless." General Helen Troy studied the tactical displays showing the scope of the system collapse. "What's the status of their planetary installations?" "According to our long-range sensors, the same failures are spreading to their homeworld and colony planets. Amy's hack didn't just disable their military, it's crippling their entire civilization." In his prison cell aboard the flagship, Dr. Carl Davis watched the chaos on the bridge with professional interest. The Dominion officers were running from station to station, desperately trying to restore basic ship functions. None of their efforts were working. Through careful observation over the past months, Carl had learned much about Dominion society. They were not just conquerors, but parasites who had built their empire by stealing the innovations of other species. Now that theft was being turned against them, a Dominion guard appeared at his cell door, looking more confused than threatening. The alien spoke in broken English, clearly struggling with the unfamiliar language. "Human scientist, you help us fix ship systems? We give you freedom if you help." Carl almost laughed at the irony. The aliens who had kept him prisoner were now begging for his assistance. "I'm afraid I can't help you. The problem isn't with your hardware. It's with your understanding of the software that runs it." Back on Earth, Amy's team was discovering the true scope of what they had unleashed. The hack had not just disabled the Dominion fleet. It had infected every connected system in their empire, spreading across light years of space through their own communication networks. "Amy, you need to see this." Tony Rivera called from his monitoring station. "I'm picking up signals from dozens of star systems. Species we've never heard of are sending messages. It looks like they're thanking us." Amy walked over to Tony's station and stared at the incoming transmissions. Messages in dozens of alien languages were flooding their receivers, all carrying the same basic meaning. The Dominion slave species were free. How is this possible? Amy asked. Our hack was designed to affect Dominion technology, not liberate entire civilizations. Kevin looked up from his analysis of the spreading system failures. Remember what we learned about their technology base. The Dominion didn't just steal human innovations. They stole from every species they conquered. Their entire network is built on the combined knowledge of dozens of civilizations. And now that network is collapsing, Laura Kim added. It's affecting every Dominion installation across their empire, every slave planet, every prison facility, every military base. They're all losing power simultaneously. The magnitude of what humanity had accidentally accomplished began to sink in. What had started as a desperate defense of Earth had become the liberation of an entire section of the galaxy. Ambassador Vextar, who had first made contact with humanity months earlier, sat in his darkened quarters aboard a disabled Dominion cruiser. The lights had failed hours ago and the life support systems were beginning to malfunction. For the first time in his long career, he was experiencing the helplessness that his victims had felt. A human voice came through the ship's emergency communication system. It was Captain Jake Martinez, offering assistance to the stranded alien crews. Attention Dominion vessels. This is Captain Martinez of the Earth ship New Frontier. We are prepared to provide humanitarian assistance to your crews. Respond if you wish to be rescued. Vextar stared at the communication panel in disbelief. The species he had planned to enslave was offering to save his life. The irony was not lost on him. High Commander Zethrak faced the collapse of everything he had known. His empire was crumbling. His fleet was powerless. And the primitive humans he had underestimated were offering mercy to their former enemies. The greatest military force in the galaxy had been brought down not by superior weapons or numbers, but by the ingenuity and determination of a species they had dismissed as worthless. The age of Dominion was ending, and a new era was about to begin. 6 months after the collapse of the Dominion Empire, Admiral Susan Wright stood on the bridge of her flagship as it approached the liberated world of Kepler 442b. The planet had been under alien control for over 3 centuries. Its native population, enslaved and forced to work in massive mining operations that stripped their world of precious metals. Captain Johnson, what's the status of the planetary defense grid? Susan asked her second in command. Pete Johnson checked his displays before responding. All Dominion weapons platforms are still offline, Admiral. The locals have been working to restore their own technology, but they're asking for our help with the transition. Beside him, Commander Anna Mills monitored the communication channels. Admiral, we're receiving messages from the planetary government. They want to formally thank Earth for their liberation and discuss joining what they're calling the Galactic Liberation Council. Susan nodded with satisfaction. The Liberation Council had been Dr. Carl Davis's idea, formed in the weeks following the Dominion collapse. Instead of humans taking control of the freed territories, the Council allowed each liberated species to govern themselves while working together for mutual protection and support. On the planet's surface, former slave Grixtal of the reptilian, Skatar people met with human diplomatic teams. The large-scaled being had been a mining supervisor under Dominion rule, forced to enforce alien orders against his own people. Now he served as his planet's representative to the growing alliance of free worlds. Ambassador Foster, Grixtal said in his carefully learned English, my people are still suspicious of any spacefaring species offering help. We have been slaves for so long that freedom feels dangerous. Claire Foster, Earth's newly appointed ambassador to the Liberation Council, understood the aliens' concerns. Grixtal, I know it's hard to trust anyone after what you've been through, but look around you. We're not taking control of your world or demanding tribute. We're here to help you rebuild. The Skatar leader gestured toward the human engineers, working alongside his people to restore their planet's infrastructure. This is what confuses us. The Dominion always took from us. You give freely. Why? Claire smiled gently. Because that's what good neighbors do. We help each other. Similar scenes were playing out across dozens of worlds as human rescue fleets, led by officers like Captain Frank Lewis and Commander Rachel Stone, worked to establish contact with liberated populations. Each species they encountered had been oppressed for generations, their technology stripped away and their people used as slave labor. Back on Earth, Amy Clark had been promoted to director of the Galactic Communication Network. Her underground laboratory had been replaced by a gleaming facility, where programmers and scientists from multiple species worked together to build something unprecedented in galactic history. "Kevin, how's the integration of the Mordain mathematical systems going?" Amy asked as she reviewed the latest progress reports. Kevin Walsh looked up from his workstation where he was collaborating with the aquatic alien, whose tank allowed it to work alongside air-breathing species. "Their approach to quantum calculations is incredible, Amy. If we combine their methods with our programming logic, we could solve computational problems that would take us decades on our own." The Mordain scientist, whose name translated roughly to deep current, communicated through a translation device that converted its sonic patterns into human speech. "Your species' approach to creative problem-solving fascinates us, Director Clark. We have spent generations perfecting mathematical precision, but you show us the value of intuitive leaps." Amy walked through the facility, observing dozens of similar partnerships. Species that had never been allowed to share knowledge under Dominion rule were now learning from each other. The result was an explosion of innovation that benefited everyone. Dr. Carl Davis had established the Liberation Council headquarters on a neutral space station built from the wreckage of Dominion ships. The irony was intentional. The tools of oppression had been transformed into symbols of cooperation. "The tribunal is ready to begin proceedings against High Commander Zethrak and the Dominion leadership," Carl announced to the assembled representatives of 43 liberated species. The trial was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of victor's justice imposed by conquering humans, it was a collaborative effort by all the species the Dominion had oppressed. Each group shared their experiences and testified about the crimes committed against their people. Zethrak himself sat in the defendant's chair, his pale blue skin now showing the gray tinge of someone who had lost everything. The former Supreme Commander of a galactic empire was now just another war criminal facing justice. "High Commander Zethrak," Carl said formally, "you stand accused of crimes against 43 different species across 200 worlds. How do you answer these charges?" Zethrak's voice was barely a whisper. "I followed the traditions of my people. The strong rule the weak. That is the natural order." Grixtal stood to respond, his large frame imposing even in the formal setting of the tribunal. "There is nothing natural about slavery, Zethrak. What you call strength, we call cowardice. You stole from others because you were too weak to create anything yourselves." The trial lasted for weeks, with representatives from each liberated species sharing their stories. But the most powerful testimony came from an unexpected source: Dominion citizens who had opposed their government's policies. A young Dominion female named Ythara took the witness stand with visible fear. "I was a junior officer in the Dominion fleet. I tried to report the illegal treatment of prisoners, but my superiors told me it was necessary for the Empire's survival." Claire Foster, serving as one of the tribunal judges, leaned forward. "What changed your mind about the Dominion's actions?" "When I saw humans offering medical aid to Dominion crews whose ships had been disabled by the hack," Ythara replied. "You could have left us to die, but instead you saved us. I realized that true strength comes from helping others, not conquering them." The tribunal's final verdict was unanimous. The Dominion leadership would face imprisonment, but they would also be given opportunities for rehabilitation. Several liberated species had argued for execution, but the humans had advocated for a different approach. "We don't want to become like those who oppressed us," Amy Clark had told the council. "If we start killing our enemies, we become the very thing we fought against." The sentence reflected this philosophy. Zethrak and his officers would spend their lives working to repair the damage they had caused, supervised by representatives from the species they had harmed. 5 years after first contact, Amy Clark stood before an audience of thousands in the Liberation Council's new headquarters. Students from dozens of species filled the auditorium, eager to learn about human programming concepts that had made the liberation possible. The most important thing to understand, Amy told her diverse audience, is that the hack succeeded not because humans are superior to other species, but because we approached the problem differently. A young Skitar in the front row raised her clawed hand. Director Clark, how did you know the Dominion systems would be vulnerable to your attack? Amy smiled at the question that got to the heart of everything that had happened. We realized that they had stolen technology without understanding the thinking behind it. They could use the tools, but they couldn't improve them or defend against them properly. An aquatic Mordain student asked through its translator, "What can we learn from this that will help us avoid similar situations in the future?" "Never stop being curious," Amy replied. "Never stop asking questions. The moment we think we know everything is the moment we become vulnerable to those who are still learning." After the lecture, Amy walked through the station's observation deck, looking out at the ships from dozens of species docked at the facility. Each vessel represented a world that was now free to determine its own destiny. Kevin Walsh joined her at the viewing window. "Hard to believe it all started with you noticing something odd about alien encryption patterns." Amy nodded, remembering those exhausting nights in the underground laboratory. The Dominion made two critical mistakes. First, they underestimated human ingenuity. Second, they never understood that true strength comes from cooperation, not domination. "And now?" Kevin asked. Amy gestured toward the diverse fleet outside their window. "Now we're building something the galaxy has never seen before. A civilization based on mutual respect and shared knowledge instead of conquest and oppression." The Liberation Council had grown into something beyond what anyone had imagined. Trade flowed freely between member worlds, knowledge was shared openly, and conflicts were resolved through negotiation rather than warfare. It was not perfect, no civilization ever could be, but it was something worth protecting. Dr. Carl Davis, now elderly but still sharp, often told visitors that humanity's greatest victory was not the hack that brought down the Dominion. It was the choice to build something better in its place. The aliens had underestimated humanity's technical abilities, but they had completely failed to understand human values. In the end, it was not superior firepower or advanced technology that won the war. It was the simple human belief that freedom and cooperation were worth fighting for, and that made all the difference.